In most situations, leveling your coach is as easy as pushing auto, but there are situations in which you will have to level your coach manually. So today, I'm going to walk you through how to do that on the valid leveling system. So stick around. Hi friends, I'm Steve from RV Squared. Today I'm going to walk you through a little bit of a challenging leveling situation, and in this case we're in a campsite where it's on dirt and it's not very level, probably about 4 or 5 degrees lower in the back end of the site, and it presented a little bit of a challenge for me to get the rig in that little valley and get it as level as possible to begin with, because on a Newell there's not a lot of travel in terms of how much you can level. Most situations you're going to have a very easy time leveling if you stage your coach correctly, and if the sights are correctly leveled to begin with. All you got to do is pull the parking brake and hit auto, and you're going to be set within 20 to 30 seconds. Where in this case that wasn't so easy, so let me flip around and show you what I'm talking about. Now we're already set up here and for the most part level, but I did it this way so you can see the extreme differences, and it really doesn't take much. When you've got a 45-foot coach, those small differences can extrapolate into very big variances from front to rear. And if you look, you'll notice my front tires are buried deep within the well, whereas my rears are elevated substantially. Now this was not an easy thing to accomplish, and even as it is right now, I am not perfectly level. But I will tell you one benefit to not being perfectly level. In fact, we're squatted about 1 degree in the rear, and I'm going to show you something that's kind of a secret that I learned that I might use in the future, and that comes to dumping. That's right. The way the Newell is configured, the outlet to the tank is actually in the rear. So if you'll look down here, that's the rear of the coach. The outlet for the waste tank is at the rear. It's actually on the right side. So guess what? Our coach drains like nobody's business now, because our coach is actually slanted just a little bit to the rear, and that's enough to make that tank completely drain. So in the future, I'm actually going to think about dropping my back end down a little bit to help that waste tank drain that much quicker, that much better. So let's go over some basics. Since I've been parked here for a little bit, I am going to power the rig back up, and I'm going to get back in the travel mode so we can walk through this kind of from the get-go. It's best to, when you're leveling and using your slides, it's best to have the rig running, and it's for a couple purposes. Number one is, because the main compressor is off of the main engine, it's supplying your air tanks, and while the leveling system is supplied off the auxiliary tank, which is also regenerated from the auxiliary compressors, it just works better if you've got the rig running. And of course, as always, when you have the rig running, it's supporting the electrical system. Now that the rig is in travel mode, I want to show you a couple secrets to the valid leveling system that really come in handy. The all raise and all lower functions are very useful. In the travel mode, you can squat down to go under a door, for example, or a bridge if you really need to. You can press this down and it'll actually start to lower the corners. You can hear it exhaust right now. You can also hold the raise button down and it'll raise the corners. I prefer to use the manual when I do this, because that way if I'm going to raise so I don't drag the back end, I can hold this down for 3 seconds and it goes into the raise mode. And after it times out, it'll stop chirping at you, meaning it's completed its raise cycle, and you can go through a number of times to get the coach to raise up completely. They safety lock out the all lower because they don't want you to actually drive away with that lowered. So it's a momentary press. No matter how long you press that down, as soon as you let off of the all corners lower button, it'll stop lowering. So let's go back to the travel mode. To activate the leveling system, you obviously need to be in park. When I hit auto, you're going to see this error, which is slope. Now that means that this valid system on the Newell coach cannot possibly level you in this particular site. So don't panic. We go to manual. In manual mode, I now have what looks to be like a contractor's bubble, and these red meaning I am not level in that particular instance. So I'm tilted and I'm also back to front, not level. So this is like a bubble. So the bubble's in the front, which means I'm lower in the rear, and the bubble is to the right side, which means I'm lower on the left. If this was auto, what it would do, it would level the back, then the front, and then side to side in pairs, and it would do that 3 different cycles. One thing that you should always keep in mind, that when you level a coach manually, most manufacturers would suggest that you do it in pairs. So you raise the back, lower the back, raise the front, lower the front, or raise the right, lower the right, raise the left, lower the left. Do it in pairs. The reason why is if you put too much stress on one corner of the coach, you'll get an error that says twist, and then it'll lock this panel out. It'll stop you from doing any more harm because you're putting undue torsion on the frame of the rig. That's not just with a Newell, that's with other coaches as well. In this case, I am going to try to lower the front. So what I will do is I will cord these two, and you'll hear the air exhausting out of the front, and I'm going to lower that front down all the way until I don't hear any more hissing. And it actually kind of leveled out the front a little bit. Now, it's still not brought the back up far enough, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to manually raise the back as far as it'll go. Now I happen to know, because I've done this, that I'm not going to achieve perfect leveling in the back. But you'll notice that as I've raised the back, the coach has become level from left to right. And you can hold this down for a little bit more. You can even try to lower the front a little bit. And if it's all exhausted, you're not going to get any better. So in this case, it's going to have to be good enough for me. Now, if that back light is fluctuating just a little bit, I might just lower it just a tad bit on the right and then try to raise it up all the way on the left. So I'm satisfied with this. Finally, because my valves are good and I know my bags don't have a leak, the next thing to do is to turn the system off. Turning the system off does a couple things. First of all, it kind of locks you in place so that the system is not constantly trying to auto level you, because in this case, it can't achieve perfect leveling. So imagine us being here for 10 days, 2 weeks, or whatever. The system is constantly going to be trying to work and wake up and level, which is never going to be achieved. So in this particular case, turning the system off is definitely a benefit. Also, if you're just in a normal level campground, if your coach has a good solid leveling system, meaning there's no air leaks and your valves are not leaking, your manifolds are tight, you really don't need to have it automatically leveling all the time. The valid system is programmed to go to sleep. The controller goes to sleep in about 20 seconds, and then the sensors go to sleep after like a couple minutes, a minute and a half and 2 minutes. And then every now and again, the controller will wake up and go, how's my level? And if it's not level, it'll hiss and pop and creak and re-level the coach. Now that's really good for people who have slow leaks, or the system just has some variances to it. But in general, you really don't need to have it constantly seeking level. It's also a good diagnostic if you turn the system off and you come out to your coach in a week or even a couple days and you see your coach leaning on one side or drop down on one side or drop down on the back. It means you've got a leak somewhere, and that's a good diagnostic tool. If you were to keep your system in the auto level mode in storage and you come back after a month, it's still going to be level when you look at it, but it's because that system has constantly been waking up and the compressor is constantly going to recharge that auxiliary tank to keep it level. So in this case, I'm pretty happy with how we are in the leveling. Let me show you a couple tools to verify that. Now on the iPhone, a lot of people don't realize that the iOS app called Compass actually has a leveling device in it. It used to have a little bubble, but now they've got a crosshair. So you can put that down. Be careful when you have a case or when you have cameras on the back of your iPhone, because you'll notice that those have an embossed section, which means it's not going to be super level when you put this down on a surface. So what I do is I hang the camera off the surface. That makes this particular surface of the phone nice and flat. And you'll see here that crosshair. I don't know if you can see it when I tilt the phone back and forth. I personally prefer to use an app called Clinometer, because Clinometer actually has a bubble in it. And you'll see here, it reports not just the bubble, but it reports degrees. So I'm about a degree off front to back, and a degree off from left to right. I can verify that in several different areas. Here's the galley. I can walk back and even check back here, and you can see it's gotten a little bit more off level. So right now I'm going to call that good, and I'm going to turn the system off, turn the motor off, and that's all there is to it. So we're going to turn the actual leveling system off, and off goes the rig. Now incidentally, you could go back in the accessory mode and turn this leveling system back on. Once again, most of the manufacturers suggest that you keep the rig running, but I'm just showing this for purposes of demonstration, that if I want to trim this a little bit more, I certainly could. So it's the advanced play, if you will, that you might need someday, and hope you got some tips and tricks out of this video. As always, thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you for the comments and the positive feedback. Safe travels to you all.